The Beatles were appearing at Bradford's GAUMONT cinema for a third time on Friday, the 9th of October 1964. As had been the case with their previous two visits, this was also to be the start of a new UK tour. Dave Wilmot, who had been the general manager at the GAUMONT since 1962, departed the week before the Beatles arrived in Bradford. His successor was Peter Davis, formerly the general manager of the Harlow Newtown Odeon cinema in Essex. His first duty in Bradford was finalising preparations for the two Beatles shows. The expected craziness commenced in the auditorium the night before. The Telegraph and Argus reported that the GAUMONT's patrons had vacated the cinema after the last day's screening of Cleopatra, all except for two girls. Their plan was simple. Should they be inside the theatre when the Beatles arrived the following day, then they would be in the perfect position to personally greet them. The pair hid away in the Circle balcony and prepared for an overnight stay, but Mr. Davis discovered them around midnight. One of the girls explained that it was her birthday the following day, the same as John Lennon, and so she wanted to celebrate it alongside him. But Mr. Davis was having none of it. He said, "We marched the girls out of the theatre, which had been locked up for the night when we found them. They were in tears." The new general manager also pondered on the impending blast of Beatlemania that was heading his way. He said, "I'm looking forward to the experience tonight, but I must confess I do keep shaking at the knees at the very thought of it." Heavy traffic and autograph-hunting police escorts delayed the Beatles, but brief and precious footage of their joyous arrival at the GAUMONT was captured by local television cameras. The group emerged one at a time from a car parked in the passageway of the Thornton Road wing. Mr. Davis, complete with carnation, can be seen in the footage as the Beatles rush past him, waving to the camera. As it was John Lennon's 24th birthday, he famously commemorated the occasion by scribbling, "John Lennon was here, 9th of October 1964, on a dressing room wall." Fans waiting outside the GAUMONT might have been fortunate enough to hear preview renditions of "I Feel Fine" wafting through the locked doors whilst the Beatles were sound checking, although the song was not going to be performed that evening. As it was the first night of the tour, a press conference in one of the GAUMONT's dressing rooms had been arranged. It was filmed and extensively photographed. The Beatles posed for pictures with Mary Wells, the famous Motown star, who was a special guest on the tour. Several of the photographs appeared on the front pages of many publications, some of them overseas. John Lennon spoke to Pete Holdsworth, the Telegraph and Argus showbiz reporter, about the daily life of being a Beatle. He said, "Our day usually begins with breakfast about 10 a.m, and by 11 a.m. we are travelling again. Paul McCartney and I have thought up many a number when we've been in the car. I have no fear of drying up. I have enough music in my head at the moment to write at least another 60 or 70 songs." John was also disappointed about missing out on mailed birthday cards because he had to leave London before the postman had arrived that morning, and he hadn't received anything from the other members of the group. But Ringo explained why. He said, "We've not bought him anything, not because we don't like him, but honestly, what could we buy him? He's got everything he could want. We make a practice of not buying things for one another." Another person in the dressing room was 5-year-old Karen Spence from Pudsey. Her father, a music and literature critic, had previously made John Lennon's acquaintance when he'd reviewed one of his early books. He asked John if he could bring his daughter along to meet the Beatles that day, and as it was also to be John Lennon's birthday, Karen had decided she'd like to sing happy birthday to him, and so she rehearsed a song each night before bedtime. However, the noise in the crowded room and the heat from the camera flashbulbs ruined Karen's plan. She said, "My dad had explained to John that I'd been practicing Happy Birthday, and he then stood me on the table in front of the Beatles." The room fell silent for a brief moment, and then flashbulbs were popping, and people were shouting my name. "Karen, look over here! Karen, this way! Karen!" Feeling overawed, I decided that I couldn't sing, and I promptly stepped down from the table. Not to go to my dad though, but onto John Lennon's knee. At that point, the remaining Beatles decided that they would sing Happy Birthday to John on my behalf. Record Mirror documented the scene in the auditorium just prior to the Beatles' on-stage arrival for the first house performance. They said, "Huge men brought in from dance halls in the city sat on the edge of the stage, whilst others assisted the police." The review continued. As soon as the curtains opened and John, Paul, George and Ringo came into sight, there was yet another frantic surge to the front of the theatre. Some girls were hoisted back to the seats by their hair, others were more politely coaxed back to their seats, but many just wouldn't budge. Record Mirror counted approximately 60 policemen guarding the stage area, but none of them were wearing helmets, probably because when the Rolling Stones played at the Gaumont a month before, many policemen's helmets were damaged by fans. There was also about 40 firemen and nearly 60 St John's ambulancemen and nurses to help with the fainting fans. The second show was just as wild according to Record Mirror. They said practically everybody in the stalls stood on top of the seats and much of the upholstery was completely ruined. The Beatles' 2 appearances that evening were rapturously received according to Peter Holdsworth. He said, "More than 6,000 ecstatic fans, many of them older this time, gave them a hero send-off on a tour which will take them to 27 cities in 32 days. Special mention was also awarded to Mary Wells, who according to Peter was a compelling vocalist. Mary Wells' performance during the first house was historic in its own little way. She was actually the first Motown star ever to appear on a British stage. However, despite her own fame, Mary had to battle to gain the attentions of fans, understandably too preoccupied by the imminent arrival of the headliners. The efforts of the ambulance workers and police inside the theatre was especially praised by Peter for their fine service in holding back what could have been a stampeding audience and looking after fainting girls. The banner-waving fans were unable to break through police-enforced barriers, and so they hoped that the gifts they had brought along would at least make some contact with the group. One of the objects lobbed onto the stage was a huge teddy bear, a birthday present for John Lennon. The Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein, also had this to say: "I would like to take this opportunity of thanking the many fans who attended the 2 shows at Bradford for giving the show such a wonderful send-off and for being a marvellously warm audience." John Lennon shouted, "It's been a great day's night," to Peter Holdsworth immediately after the 2 shows. That jubilant comment should now serve as the retrospective full stop to the Beatles' association with Bradford's Gaumont Cinema. After all, the 3 visits that the Beatles made there continue to generate so many wonderful memories and personal anecdotes from the fortunate local fans that had witnessed them.